There's something about Northern California that feels different after dark. The forests turn silent, the wind carries whispers, and old buildings seem to breathe again. I've traveled through these places myself. Empty hallways, flickering lights, and moments that made my heart stop for just a second. You think ghosts are just stories until you stand somewhere that remembers too much. Tonight, I'll take you to 5 real haunted places hidden across Northern California, where history never really died, and some souls might still be waiting to be heard. So turn off the lights, and let's see what's still awake in the dark. If you love exploring real haunted places and true ghost stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more darkness waiting to be uncovered. Ghost 1. Preston Castle, Ione, California. The night I first arrived at Preston Castle in Ione, the air felt heavy, like the kind that warns you something isn't right. The castle stood on a hill, its massive red brick walls dark against the pale moonlight. I had seen photos before, but standing there in person was different. It wasn't just abandoned, it felt alive, as if the walls were quietly breathing with the memories of everyone who once lived there. I pushed open the front door, and the hinges groaned like something waking from a long sleep. The smell of damp wood and rust filled the air. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing peeling paint, broken tiles, and a long hallway that seemed to stretch forever. Each step I took echoed back to me, louder than it should have. It was strange. Every sound in that place seemed to linger too long, like it didn't want to die. I had read about the castle's past. Built in the 1890s as a reform school for troubled boys, Preston Castle had seen more pain than peace. Many of the boys were orphans, sent there for small crimes, some for nothing at all. The staff was harsh, the punishments cruel. One nurse named Anna Corbin was even murdered here in 1950, her body found brutally beaten in the basement. They said her spirit still wandered the halls, waiting for justice that never came. When I reached the grand staircase, I felt a sudden chill crawl up my back. The air turned cold in seconds. My breath came out in white clouds. I stopped and looked up, nothing there. Yet, I could swear I heard soft footsteps above me, slow and steady, like someone pacing a room. I waited, heart pounding, but the sound just faded away. I moved upstairs. The floors creaked under my shoes, and somewhere behind me, a door slammed. I froze. My flashlight flickered for a second, and that's when I heard it, a woman's voice. Faint. Muffled. It sounded like she was calling for help. I followed the sound to the old infirmary, where the smell of disinfectant and decay mixed in the air. The temperature dropped again. Inside, there was an old metal bed frame, rusted and half broken. On the wall beside it, someone had scratched words into the plaster. I didn't do it. My chest tightened. I turned around, and for a split second, I saw her. A woman in a long white dress, standing by the window. Her head was turned down, hair covering her face. Then she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just cold air and silence. I stayed still for a long time, staring at the empty space where she'd been. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't move. Every instinct told me to leave, but something about that place kept me rooted there, like it wanted me to witness its pain. When I finally stepped outside, the night air felt warm again. I looked back at the castle, the moonlight brushing against its broken windows. For a moment, it almost looked peaceful. But I knew better. Preston Castle isn't just an abandoned building, it's a memory trapped in stone. And once you walk through its doors, a small part of you never really leaves. 2 Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. The first time I saw the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a living maze watching me. The mansion stood under a gray sky, stretching wider and higher than I had imagined, windows pointing in all directions like eyes that refused to blink. I had heard all the stories about Sarah Winchester, the widow who believed the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles haunted her, and that building endlessly would keep them away. But standing there in front of it, I felt something much deeper, like the house itself still carried her fear. When I stepped inside, the air changed instantly. It was colder, heavier. The guide's voice echoed faintly as we began the tour, but I barely listened. My focus stayed on the strange architecture, staircases leading to ceilings, doors that opened into walls, hallways that turned back on themselves. It was like someone had built confusion into the structure on purpose. Every time I thought I understood where I was, I'd turn a corner and find myself completely lost again. At one point, I wandered away from the group. I didn't mean to, it just happened. The sound of footsteps faded behind me, replaced by the faint ticking of a clock somewhere deep in the house. The hallway was dim, lit only by a small window with cracked glass. Dust floated through the sunlight like tiny ghosts. Then I heard it, a soft knock. 3 times. It came from the door right beside me. I froze. The guide had said that some doors led nowhere, but this one was different. I could feel something behind it, something that wasn't empty space. My hand shook as I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that twisted sharply upward. My flashlight barely reached the top, but I could hear faint whispers, almost like someone was praying. My heartbeat got louder, faster. I climbed halfway before a sudden gust of cold air hit me so hard it blew out the light. Everything went dark. I turned to go back, but the staircase behind me was gone. Or maybe it was there. I just couldn't see it. My fingers brushed the wall, and it felt warm, pulsing faintly under my touch. I swear I heard breathing, close to my ear. Then a woman's voice whispered my name. I froze again. She sounded sad, almost pleading. When I turned around, the air shimmered for a second, and I saw her, Sarah Winchester herself, or something that looked like her, standing just a few steps above, holding a candle that didn't light the room. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, not anger. Then she vanished, as quietly as she appeared. The next thing I remember is stumbling back into the main hallway, gasping for air, as if I'd been underwater. The group was nowhere to be found. Only silence. When I finally stepped outside into the sunlight, I looked back at the mansion's hundreds of windows. One of them, high up near the tower, had a shadow standing behind it, still watching me. Even now, when I think about that night, I can't forget her eyes. People say Sarah built the house to confuse the spirits that haunted her. But after what I felt inside, I think she succeeded. Only now, it's us who get lost in it. 3 Brookdale Lodge, Brookdale, Santa Cruz Mountains. The night I drove into the Santa Cruz Mountains to visit the Brookdale Lodge, the road felt strangely alive. The fog was thick, clinging to my windshield like fingers trying to block my view. By the time I reached the old wooden sign that said, Brookdale Lodge, EST 1890, I could already feel that strange pull, the kind that tells you the place remembers every soul that ever walked through its doors. The building stood half hidden by tall redwoods, its roof sagging under years of rain. When I stepped inside, the air smelled of pine, old smoke, and something faintly metallic, like dried blood. The sound of running water echoed faintly, coming from the creek that flowed right through the middle of the dining room. I'd seen pictures of it before, but seeing that stream under dim yellow light, surrounded by empty tables, felt unreal. It was beautiful, but unsettling. I wasn't the only one there. The caretaker, an older man with tired eyes, gave me a key and said quietly, "If you hear laughter tonight, don't follow it." Then he turned and disappeared down the hallway before I could ask what he meant. My room was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the creek. The walls were thin, and I could hear water rushing softly beneath the floorboards. Around midnight, I heard something else, giggles. A child's laughter, echoing faintly through the hall. It wasn't playful. It was distant, hollow, like it came from the other side of a dream. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The hallway was empty, just a row of dark doors. As I moved toward the stairs, the laughter came again, closer this time. Then, the faint sound of small footsteps splashing in water. I followed the sound down to the dining room, where the creek shimmered under the moonlight. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in the shallow water in a white dress. Her hair hung wet over her shoulders, and she was humming softly, a tune I didn't recognize but couldn't forget. My voice cracked when I asked, "Are you okay?" She turned slowly. Her face was pale, eyes dark and endless. The humming stopped. For a second, everything went silent. No water, no wind, nothing. Then she smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that makes your stomach drop. I blinked once, and she was gone. Just gone. I stood there shaking, staring at the empty stream. My flashlight flickered, and suddenly I saw small wet footprints leading from the water toward the stairs, fresh ones. I followed them, but they vanished halfway up, like she had disappeared into the wall. When I told the caretaker the next morning, he just nodded slowly. "That's Sarah," he said quietly. "She drowned here in 1918. She never left." As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The fog had lifted, but for just a second, I saw the outline of a small figure standing by the creek, watching my car disappear down the mountain road. Even now, whenever I hear water running at night, I think of her. And I swear sometimes I still hear her laugh. For Alcatraz Island, San Francisco Bay, California. The night I took the ferry to Alcatraz, the wind felt colder than usual. The city lights behind me were fading, and ahead, the island sat like a dark scar in the middle of the bay. The closer I got, the quieter it felt, as if even the ocean was holding its breath. Everyone knows Alcatraz for its history, but what most people don't realize is how alive that silence feels once you're standing there, surrounded by the weight of everything that happened inside those walls. When I stepped off the boat, the first thing I noticed was the smell, salt, rust, and something faintly rotten. The buildings were cracked and crumbling, covered with moss and bird droppings, but the energy there didn't feel dead. It felt watchful. Our guide started talking about the old prison days, but I barely heard him. My eyes kept drifting to the empty cell blocks, especially cell block D, the one they called the hole. Later, when most of the group had gone back to the dock, I stayed behind, pretending I wanted to take a few last photos. The sun was already gone, and the wind had picked up, whistling through broken windows. The main hallway was darker than I expected. My flashlight beam cut across rows of cells, some open, some still locked tight. I stopped at one cell that had claw marks etched into the concrete wall, real ones. The guide had mentioned that one prisoner swore a thing with glowing eyes tried to kill him in that cell the night before he died. I thought it was just another story, until that moment. As I stood there, the light in my hand flickered once, then went out completely. I hit it a few times, nothing. The air grew heavy, colder with each breath. And then I heard it, a low humming sound, almost like someone whispering a tune from far away. My heart started pounding. The sound moved closer, slow and steady, until I could feel it beside me. Then came the smell, strong, like burnt metal. I turned toward the sound, and in that darkness, I saw a faint shape standing inside the cell. It wasn't clear at first, just a shadow darker than the dark around it. Then, two pale eyes opened. Not bright, not glowing, just there, watching me. I couldn't move. My throat felt tight. The humming stopped, replaced by a soft dragging sound, like chains being pulled across the floor. I took one step back, and the sound grew louder. 2 steps back, and the cell door creaked shut by itself. The slam echoed through the whole block, and I bolted. By the time I reached the dock, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my camera. When I looked back, I could still see cell block D faintly lit by the moonlight. For a moment, I thought I saw a shadow moving behind one of the barred windows. I didn't tell anyone what I saw that night. Some things are better left on that island. But even now, whenever I close my eyes, I can still hear that faint humming echoing in my ears. And I know I wasn't alone in that prison. 5 Queen and Hotel, San Francisco, California. The Queen and Hotel in San Francisco looks beautiful from the outside, like something straight out of a Victorian dream. But when I walked through its doors that evening, I could feel something waiting behind its charm. The chandelier light shimmered gently, casting long shadows across the lobby walls. I had come to stay one night, just to see if the stories were true, the ones about room 410, where the spirit of Miss Mary Lake, the old headmistress, was said to linger. My room wasn't far from it. I passed through narrow hallways lined with antique portraits, their painted eyes following me wherever I went. The air smelled faintly of old perfume and polished wood. When I stopped outside room 410, I didn't plan to go in, just look. But the door was slightly open, like it was waiting for me. Against my better judgment, I pushed it. The room was perfect, too perfect. Neatly made bed, soft golden light, and the faint sound of piano music coming from somewhere distant. I stepped inside and called out, "Hello?" There was no answer, but the air felt warmer, almost comforting. I could feel a presence, not threatening, just aware. I stayed for a few minutes, filming quietly for my notes, then left the room and returned to my own. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Someone was humming. The sound was gentle, like a lullaby. My heart started pounding, but there was something peaceful in the tone. I sat up, and that's when I noticed the blanket that had been folded at the end of my bed was now pulled up to my shoulders, perfectly tucked. My first thought was that I'd done it in my sleep, until I smelled lavender, strong and sweet, filling the room. I turned on the bedside lamp, and everything looked normal, except for the faint imprint of a hand on the pillow next to me. The humming stopped. Then, the floorboards creaked softly just once. I whispered, "Miss Lake?" A sudden breeze passed through the room, though the window was closed. The curtains lifted slightly, and for a second, I saw a reflection in the mirror across from me, a woman standing behind me, smiling faintly, her hair tied up neatly, wearing an old-fashioned dress. My breath caught in my throat. I turned around quickly. No one was there. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat awake till morning, staring at the door. Just before dawn, I heard a gentle knock, 3 times, coming from room 410. When I checked out the next morning, the lady at the front desk smiled knowingly and said, "Did she tuck you in last night?" Her tone was calm, almost casual. I didn't answer. I just nodded. As I stepped outside, the morning sun hit the windows of room 410. For a moment, I thought I saw her again, Miss Mary Lake, looking out, her hand resting gently on the glass. She didn't seem sad, just watchful, like she was still making sure her guests felt safe. Even now, whenever I smell lavender, I remember that night. And I know, she's still there, taking care of her old school, one guest at a time.